Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Mark Silverman. I'm a planning director at Critical Mass. We are a full-service digital agency with offices all over the globe. With me today from Critical Mass, our creative director, Miss Amy Heyer. Also with us today from Red Light Management, artist manager, Mr. Mark Allen. And last but certainly not least, the president of the Jerry Garcia Family, LLC, and my friend, Miss Trixie Garcia. On behalf of all of us, I would like to welcome you today to our talk that is somewhat provocatively, yet ever elusively titled, Stronger Than a Séance, Resurrecting Jerry Garcia. When we talk about a séance, the word séance actually comes from the French word soir, which simply means a sitting or a session where a group of people gather to connect with a spirit. Well, indeed, today we hope to connect all of you guys with the spirit of Jerry, while at the same time unveil some really incredibly fabulous work we've been doing at the agency that was both informed by his spirit and designed to preserve his spirit for years to come. That said, for my own edification, I kind of wanted to take a little bit of an audience poll and get a quick feeling for who's out here today. So we'll start with a poll. We could do this by a show of hands. How many people in the audience can claim to have connected with the spirit of Jerry at some point in their lives, say, for example, through his music? How many people out there would self-identify as being fans? Amazing. Just what I wanted to see. Perfect. I feel better already. Okay. How many people were lucky enough to connect with him and actually see him perform live while he was with us? All right. How many people saw him more than 5 times? More than 10 times? More than 25 times? All right, good. A couple of you. Excellent. All right, final question. How many people have no idea who Jerry Garcia was, but were rather expecting a talk about a cherry-flavored ice cream from Vermont? That's what I thought. All right. Really, today's talk is for everybody, whether you're here for South by Southwest Interactive, South by Southwest Music, whether you connect, it's for the people who connected with Jerry hundreds of times while he was with us, and for the people who were unfortunately not able to connect with him then, but will now be able to connect with him in a whole new way. Because beyond connecting with the Spirit today, we're really going to be telling you guys a story about a resurrection, a digital resurrection very specifically. It's the story about how we found a dead website, no pun intended, and how we transformed that dead website into an extraordinary digital experience. Not only for the purpose of just having another website, creating another web presence for a deceased musician, but one which we hope will breathe new life and renewed vigor into the legacy of one of America's most beloved musical icons, while at the same time establishing our agency's vision for what a music site can look like when it is created around the user, when it's created around the fan as the center point. That said, in order to tell you this whole story, I need you guys to join me on a little trip. Yes, underneath all your seats, we have taped little vials of blue liquid. I need you to reach under there, grab that blue liquid, drink it down, and we'll begin in about 20 minutes. No, of course not. That's a little deadhead joke, you know? No, but I do need you guys to come on a trip with me. I need you guys to come back 25 years to the first time I connected, well, I gotta watch that, connected with the spirit of Jerry, and back to the time when the bus came by for me. So you ready for this? Boom. That's me. That's me in 1990, hours after I spent New Year's Eve with the Grateful Dead at the Oakland Coliseum. What a handsome devil, eh? And look at all that hair. Oh my God, where'd that all go? So this was probably my 20th Dead show in a series of 52 with Jerry, whether seeing him with the Grateful Dead or the Jerry Garcia Band. And I really only started to self-identify as a Deadhead several months before this. The exact date actually was July 4th, 1989. That was the day my friends finally managed to convince me to come see my first Grateful Dead concert at Rich Stadium in Buffalo, New York. And I say managed to convince me because really I wasn't into the Dead at the time. They weren't even on my radar. I grew up in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So the Dead really never, when they crossed the border to the north, they normally stayed around like the Hamilton, Toronto area or out west by the Vancouver area. But growing up, they didn't really come to my part of town, so they weren't on my radar for that. And at the time, actually, I was into heavy metal. I was into bands like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and AC/DC and stuff like that. So really but my friend, my friends, knowing that I was a concert lover, kept on saying, Mark, you have to come see this. It's an experience all to itself. You really have to. We can't tell you what it's like. You just got to come see it. So as I went trucking on to Buffalo that fateful July 4th weekend, I'm sitting in the car, we're listening to tunes on the way down, and I don't know any of the music. I knew the famous ones. I knew Touch of Grey, Truckin', Sugar Magnolia, stuff like that, but I really didn't know what I was in for. And I'm not really sure anything could have prepared me for what I was going to experience that day. I think it took me maybe 30 seconds to a minute from standing in the, being in the parking lot to realize that this was indeed going to be a very different experience. It was like I stepped into Wonderland. It was a traveling hippie circus, completely awash in tie-dye. And really, there were beautiful girls everywhere in long flowing skirts and long hair and flowers in their hair, and they were all smiling at me. And hey, I was 19 years old. I was sold. This was going to be the greatest day. But really, I think what impacted me most was that feeling of camaraderie that you instantly sensed as soon as you were in the parking lot. And in fact, one thing that sticks in my memory is a guy getting out of his car and just thrusting his hands towards the sky and saying, "I'm home." And it really kind of had that feeling of being home. But the magic, I mean, a lot of weird things happened that day. I'm not going to get into all that, but suffice it to say, it was a strange day indeed. But the real magic happened a little later in the afternoon when we the sun began to set and we walked into Rich Stadium and we went to find our seats, and I'm standing there surveying what it looks like, to be amongst 70,000 deadheads. And I swear to God, the building started to vibrate. And that vibration continued to grow in intensity right up until the time where the band walked on stage and began the ritual of the pre-show tune-up. And as the pre-show tune-up, the notes of the pre-show tune-up resolved into the opening chords of the song Bertha, the place just exploded. Everybody was out of their seats. Everybody was dancing, except me, who just looked around going, what is going on here? I couldn't believe my eyes. It was such energy. And as they first flashed Jerry Garcia's face up on the big screen for the first time, that was the moment in my head where the Jerry switch went click. Because at that moment, it was almost as if the entire crowd took a collective breath together. And there was such a dynamic, there was such love that was being transferred from the crowd to the stage, that it really was truly breathtaking. And thinking about it now, even now makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Well, when it was over, I knew two things. I knew, one, that I had found my tribe. These are the people I want to be with. This is exactly what I want to see. Two, I had to see that again and again and again. And indeed, I did go see that over and over again, like I was telling you, 52 times. And, I get, super nostalgic about those days, especially my days on summer tour. When I think back on those days, on how carefree they were and how much fun, it really was one of the last great adventures of my youth. And, that nostalgia can get pretty powerful at times, almost to the point where, I can get very emotional about it. Tears could kind of well up in my eyes at how great those times were. So, really, what is the point of this whole story that I'm telling you? How does this long-haired kid from Montreal, Quebec get to stand here right now, friends with Trixie, and really, being able to participate in this great, festival today? Well, it really did begin with one of those nostalgic moments. And like some of my Grateful Dead stories, it started with me being a little bit drunk. Yeah, so picture this. There I was in my apartment. It was a hot August night in Chicago, and I'm sitting there listening to the Grateful Dead and drinking a few beers, when for all of a sudden, whatever reason, I don't remember what I was looking for, I decided to go to see Jerry Garcia's website. So there I am in my part, and I type in www.jerrygarcia.com, click. What the hell's this? Oh, hell no. Jerry Garcia, a man who was on the cutting edge of technology his whole life, a man who played in front of the wall of sound in the 1970s, a guy who was experimenting with musical instrument digital interfaces when they were in their infancy, a guy who was always on the cutting edge of trying to give his fans the most visceral, experiential experience that he possibly could. This is what the website is? Well, that would not do. So I did what every good drunk deadhead would probably do in the same situation. I quickly found the contact information for the webmaster, and I offered them an opinion. To whom it may concern. I am a huge Garcia fan, but I'm also a strategist at a large digital agency. And to be perfectly honest with you, because I am a huge fan, in saying this site doesn't even come remotely close to doing justice to to the legacy that is Jerry Garcia. Are you kidding me? I mean, not even remotely close. Please, I urge you to contact me. I will consult for free. We are talking about an American icon here. Please. Well, I fired that email off, and I was so satisfied just knowing someone on the other end was going to get a, piece of my mind. But I was like, hey, they probably get that all the time. So I kind of forgot about the email and went about life. Anyway, a couple of months later, I'm sitting in the office, and I'm at my desk, and all of a sudden an email comes through. Look at it, and it says the following. Hi, Mark. Thank you for reaching out and caring about Jerry's sad web presence. It's depressing to look at. I totally agree with everything you said and would love to figure out how to make this work. Please let me know what you need to make it happen. Thank you, Trixie Garcia. Oh, shit. What the hell was I going to do now? On one hand, I had the opportunity of a lifetime. I had an opportunity to not only redesign the website of my idol, but to redesign the website of, as I said, one of America's most beloved musical icons. On the other hand, what the hell was I going to build? There was nothing there. There was no content. The man doesn't tour anymore, so what could I possibly build that would bring deadheads back to come to see the site over and over and over again? And then something else funny occurred to me. A lot has changed since Jerry Garcia has been around. It strikes me as hilarious when you think back on the late 80s, the early 90s, how analog everything really was. I'll give you a few examples of how things have come. When we talked about a social following in 1989, 1990, we literally meant following somebody because we had no GPS. So really the scenario was we're driving through middle America on the highways, through fields everywhere, nothing around. And we're driving, and as you got closer to the venue, you'd start to see more and more cars passing you with Grateful Dead stickers on them. So we would literally socially follow them into the parking lot because we didn't know where we were going. And if that was the social following, well, then this, of course, was the social network. This is the place where we met our social following, and of course, where we met up with friends coming from home and friends that we met on past tours. When I think about the Etsy of the day, of course, Etsy of the day was what Deadheads lovingly refer to as the Shakedown Street. This is where all the vendors got together and sold their wares, their tie-dyes and their pipes and posters and whatever else they had to sell just to make enough money to continue on the tour. When I think about Grateful Dead ticket sales, that was hilariously analog as well. What we used to have to do back at the time, in the mid-'80s, the Grateful Dead were facing a very serious scalping problem where the fans were not getting tickets. So they took a lot of the ticket sales in-house. It's one of the first bands to really do this. And what we would do is pick up the telephone and call the hotline, and we get a message. Hi, you've reached this is a new recorded message for the Grateful Dead East Coast hotline as of blah, blah, blah. And they would give us instructions on how to mail. So typically what it was a little index card, and we'd fill out the index card, and we'd say how many venues we wanted to see, the name of the venue, the number of tickets we needed per each venue, and we would put that in an envelope along with a self-addressed stamped envelope and a money order, and we'd seal it up, but just before we sent it off, we would ever so eloquently decorate the envelope just on the chance that the person giving tickets on the other end would grace us with the tickets. And if we didn't get tickets, well, this was our version of a tweet. This was us standing in the parking lot with our little sign that was less than 140 characters that said, "Can I please get in? Can you please miracle me?" Well, those are just a few examples, but a lot had changed since Jerry was around. And build a website, I kind of felt like I needed to build a time machine. A time machine that would encapsulate the spirit of the man, capture the spirit of the music, and revive the spirit of the fans. So that's what I set out to do. But I had another problem. I'm a strategy guy. I don't know how to use Photoshop. I certainly don't know how to code. So I would have to get others on board with me to help me in this little journey. And I will say, without getting into a long story of how I sold it through the agency, and I will say this. Our agency, Critical Mass, works on some amazing brands. And we are passionate about our work, and we do amazing things for our clients. But as I started to sell this around the agency, I got to see what passion for pure passion looked like. And thank God, one of the people who was there to jump on the opportunity to get on board with us was my creative director, Miss Amy Heyer.
Hey, everybody. Thank you. So we started to sort of try to assemble a team to work on this project, and we had some surprise deadheads kind of reveal that hidden persona and crawl out of the woodwork and raise their hand to be a part of this project. But there were also people like myself who just simply saw the opportunity of a lifetime. And I was never lucky enough to see Jerry perform live, and I never got to experience what Mark was talking about. But that was actually okay. We embraced that because we wanted to reach new fans. We wanted to create the next generation of Jerry fans in people like me.
So you guys want to see what we built? Yeah. All right, so we are going to continue along the trip. And we are actually going to kind of divide it up into encapsulating the spirit of the man, capturing the spirit of the music, and reviving the spirit of the fans, just to keep the pace going here. So really, who was Jerry Garcia, and why did he follow me around for all those years? Well, of course, we all know him with his work with the Grateful Dead, lead guitar player and singer with the Grateful Dead. A lot of us also know him from his work with the Jerry Garcia Band. But Jerry was an extremely versatile musician, and he played a whole bunch of different styles. He played with over 27 different bands during his career, each one of them with a very unique kind of sound to it. You think about his pedal steel work with New Riders of the Purple Sage, or you think about his banjo playing with his bluegrass ensemble, Old and in the Way, or the jazzy, funky fusions that he put together with his partner Merle Saunders during the 70s. So really, each one of these acts had its own unique sound, own unique feel, and there were many of them. And Jerry was so versatile, really, that everybody wanted to play with him. Not only like the big stars of his day, like Carlos Santana and Bob Dylan, but really, even more contemporary stars like Bonnie Raitt, who was enjoying a very nice career renaissance in the early 90s. Or the jazz greats, people like Ornette Coleman, or pictured here, Branford Marsalis. Or even the big, big stars of the day, the huge juggernaut pop stars like Sting, who ended up opening up for the Grateful Dead for his opportunity to play with Jerry. So everyone wanted to play with Jerry. Jerry himself was a pretty humble guy. He saw his effect that he had on people, but he was almost bemused by his own renown. Like, he really didn't really understand it. In fact, when he would talk to the press and talk about his music, he would often do so in very self-deprecating ways. Here's a quote that kind of really stuck to us, that really kind of captures how he felt. There were so many people that cared about me, and I was just fucking around. But, indeed, a lot of people did care about him. When he died on August 9th, 1995, really a wave of emotion swept across the country, to the point where even if you didn't know who Jerry Garcia was, you felt you lost people knew they lost someone important. And in the streets, people gathered in parks and, to console each other. Really an act of love that was reserved only for the biggest icons we had. The people I think of are like Elvis Presley, or obviously when John Lennon got assassinated. And in the streets of Haight-Ashbury, they totally blocked the streets, and people were setting up makeshift altars and consoling one another in the streets. And across town at the City Hall, where there's 3 huge flagpoles in front of the City Hall, in a fitting gesture from the civic government, they lowered 2 of the flags to half-mast, and they put up a tie-dye flag up the center. A fitting gesture from a government who had probably once feared what was going on in the Haight, but who now were recognizing Jerry as one of the favorite sons in the city's modern history. And even some brands of the time who were engaged in what we would now refer to as real-time marketing were getting involved. Here's an example of the Volkswagen, who put an ad in the Rolling Stone magazine a week after Jerry died with the iconic VW bus shedding a single tear.
So when we set out to tell Jerry's story, this was the voice that we wanted to capture. We knew that it needed to be authentic, but we really wanted people to feel the impact that Jerry had on the world. And the first thing that we wanted to do was make sure that we were preserving his legacy. So we created a living archive of his life and his music, the complete collection of his history, all in one place. This is a piece of the site that we call Jerry's Story, and it's this beautiful editorial experience where you can read and look through all of the different milestones of his life. And it's filled with different bits of folklore and stories that date all the way back to his childhood, including the story of his famous missing finger, which he actually lost at the age of 5 when his brother cut it off in a wood chopping accident. But this handprint today, an instantly recognizable symbol of Jerry and an American icon. And we wanted to tell a story in a way that it had never been told before, one where you could actually see him transform as you move deeper through the experience. And we wanted to include the places and the people that meant the most to Jerry, the ones that he had collaborated with over time. And for fans that come to this, they're able to sit down and you can read it from beginning to end like a book, or you can look for certain moments of time that really resonate the most with you. And you'll see when you go check this out that throughout the entire story, we actually rely on the words of those who surrounded Jerry, his friends, his musical companions and collaborators. Because he was so humble, he never really realized the impact, and he was really baffled when he saw that. And so we put quotes like this one that say, "I thought of Jerry, his life, and his music as sort of a river flowing through the American heart. How very many of us were pulled along by his current." And as we started to share ideas with Trixie about what we could do for his story, she wanted us to be true to everything that happened in Jerry's life. So that meant including a lot of the success and the highs from his professional career as a musician, his amazing comeback, but it also meant including some of the lows, like his struggles with drug addiction or the time that he spent in rehab. But Jerry touched so many people with his music, and when he passed away, the nation was truly devastated. And this was just one picture from Golden Gate Park that shows 25,000 fans gathering and mourning over the loss of a friend. We look to conclude his story with the words of Bob Dylan, who really summed it up beautifully by saying that there is no way to measure his greatness as either a person or a player. He simply had no equal. It's often said that Jerry leaves behind this legacy of wondrous creations, and some of those creations are the instruments, the guitars that he had made and that he played and altered endlessly to perfection. And so we wanted to carve out a real special piece of the digital experience that focused on telling the stories of those instruments, something that would appeal to the musicians and technicians who are fans themselves, maybe even some of you in the room today. And as we started doing this, we found ourselves being inspired by the way that Jerry approached music. So he was very much into improv and experimentation, and we actually found ourselves hand-drawing typography for every section of the site. This is something we would never consider or even think of doing in our day-to-day client work, but we really let our creative process change and be inspired by Jerry himself. The guitars section is a really cool interactive piece that's designed for discovery, and it tells the stories of some of his most famous guitars, like Alligator and Rosebud and Tiger and Wolf. You can go deeper into the individual stories and see the timelines of when they were first played or when they were last played. You can see all the modifications that Jerry made over time, or even where these instruments are today. So Wolf, for example, was auctioned off in 2002 for $700,000. So you can imagine what this is worth today. And each guitar has an individual photo gallery where you can look at the beauty shots, the craftsmanship, the handwork and embellishments of the instruments themselves, or you can see all the moments that Jerry spent with each one on stage. The final piece of the site that was focused on preserving his legacy is something that we call the Vault. So the Vault has over 75 original albums and 3,000 photos, videos, tickets, posters, and artwork all in one place. And as we started to collect this content, as Mark said, we really had nothing to begin with. So as we started to bring all of this together, we reached out to his family and to his friends and to photographers, and it was really overwhelming to see the outpouring of love. We had hundreds of photographers who were willing to donate their life's work to contribute to his memory. These are just a few of the surprises that came out of the attics and the basements and the scrapbooks of his family and friends. Some of these never before seen by the public. So for the fans who think that they've seen every photo there ever is of Jerry Garcia, they'll be surprised to see there's actually more in store.
All right, continuing along our little trip here. Of course, it's cats. Cats are awesome. Continuing along our little trip here, like I said, the second part of it was to capture the spirit of the music. And really, in Jerry's world, the music never stopped. He was always playing. When he wasn't on tour with the Grateful Dead, he would be in the studio. In fact, it was very common for him to be playing on the East Coast with the Dead and then fly that night home to be on the West Coast to do studio work. And so really we had to capture that spirit, the spirit of the music. You know, it stands today that he is one of, if not the most recorded guitar players of all time. And a lot of that has to do with the legacy of shows he leaves behind. Of course, Jerry played 3,900 shows that are known, probably more, over his career. If you think about that, that is roughly 130 shows a year, or a show every 3 days for 30 years straight, which is kind of mind-boggling to think about that pace. But it gets even more mind-boggling when you think that every single show was different, right? Due to his improvisational nature, he would get on stage and they wouldn't even know what they were going to play, and they would start and they would play, and every show was completely unique. Of course, this obviously led to people being able to go see shows over and over and over again, but it also gave rise to taper culture, which was really obviously completely unique to anybody at the time. So this actually started in the 60s. People started tape recording their concerts. So as soon as the earliest Deadheads realized that this was always a new show, they started taping their concerts. But eventually it became a bit of a burden because there were professional mic stands all over the place and people had no sight lines. So what they did, the organization, the Grateful Dead organization did, was they basically reined it in and gave people a taper section where they can stand and tape the concerts. So, and the deal was you were allowed to tape the concert, but you weren't allowed to sell it. You weren't allowed to use it for commercial purposes, but you were encouraged to share it with your friends. And that's what we did. We went out, I'd go off to a show, and I'd get a whole bunch of tapes from people on tour, and I'd bring them back, and I would share them with my friends. And it really was an example, a really early example of viral marketing, where all of a sudden they would be interested in the Dead and going off to see shows. Now, there are people out there that would think that letting people share your bootleg concerts is a very bad idea, right? But not the Dead. The Dead actually subscribe to that sense that, you know, if you make really incredible content and allow people to share it, that will do very positive things for you.
So in the same way that no two shows were ever alike, we wanted to make sure that no two trips through the website ever resulted in the same journey. And we knew that somehow we wanted to use technology to start to create momentum around Jerry again and start to breathe life back into all of these amazing shows and all of that content. This wasn't really an easy task for an artist who's no longer performing. So what we did is we created an experience that actually changes the more that fans interact with it. So at any given moment, day or night, you can go to the website and you can actually see what people are looking at that exact second. And it's our way of letting people discover new shows and new songs and new photos and albums that they otherwise may have never come across. It's also a way that we can let the community actually be the drivers of the content that appears on the homepage. We also created an interactive timeline of Jerry's band history. So most people are familiar with the Grateful Dead and Jerry Garcia band, maybe even Jerry and Merle, but he performed in many bands over time, and a lot of the smaller projects have really cool stories behind it. From this band timeline, you can go deeper into the details of each band. You can go on tour, see the albums that they released. You can read more about that story or see photos and videos. But what's really interesting is that a lot of Jerry's bands had different musicians that came in and out of the picture, different collaborators that came in. And at the band detail page, you can actually see the evolution of that band over time. But we didn't want to lose sight of the cultural phenomenon that was set forth by the Grateful Dead and by the taper community. We knew that we needed to give the fans a way to curate their own collection and make it entirely personal to them. But also, we also knew that shows was going to be one of the key centerpieces of the experience. So in the same way that Jerry really focused on the live show, when we started to boil down and think about what the fans really connected with, what brought them together, what their memories were linked to, it was all related to the live show. So we started to collect almost 4,000 shows. That's more than the Grateful Dead. That's actually multiple bands, decade over decade, all into one monstrous shows database. And within that database, we wanted it to be really intuitive for fans who are looking for the shows that they went to. We kind of anticipated some of the details might be a little bit foggy, or you may not remember all of everything, but there's a lot of ways to search and filter and find the shows that you went to. But we saw a real opportunity here to bring each of the individual live shows to life again. And what we needed to do that existed somewhere on the internet, but it was all spread out. You know, tickets could be found on one site, set lists could be found on another, the music could be found in the archives, but nobody had ever really brought it together. And we knew that if we could do that for each show, that we could be able to create something that we call living nostalgia. So for every single show page, we wanted to create a multi-sensory experience that recreated the feeling of being at that show. So we drummed up everything that we could think of, from set lists to the people that were there, to the songs that were played and the details of the show, the photos. And when we started to connect this information for fans, it had a pretty cool effect. We started to clear the fog a little bit for deadheads. And a really great example of this is a show from 1970 that happened at the Warehouse in New Orleans. So this is a show that has kind of a cool story behind it. The night of this show, the members of the Grateful Dead were actually arrested for drug violation charges from their hotel room. And they were taken down to the New Orleans police station. They posted their own bail, but they decided to stick around another night, and they convinced the Fleetwood Mac to stay and perform with them as well. And at that show, they passed around a bucket to collect cash for their legal troubles. And eventually, that entire experience would be immortalized with the lyrics busted down on Bourbon Street in one of their most famous songs, Truckin'. But when we launched this just before the anniversary of this show, we saw that fans were finally able to connect that show with that story, with the set list, with the lineup, with this awesome picture of Jerry, happy as ever, even though he's arrested. And it struck an emotional chord in fans. And all of a sudden, fans were talking about the show again, and they were reconnecting with Jerry and reconnecting with one another and taking screenshots of the set list and posting it out. And within a day, this became the single most popular show on the entire site, which is pretty profound for a show that's 44 years old. But we talked a little bit about the ability to curate your own collection, the taper community, and we created something called the parking lot. And the parking lot is a way that you can become a member of the site, and you can actually be a contributor of the content that exists on it. It's totally free, and as you join, you're able to save all of your favorite songs or albums or ticket stubs and photos. Every single show that you ever attended can now be saved into one digital experience. Those shows and tours and collections of all the fans are out there for people to see. So in the same way that you would trade a tape or hear about a new show in the parking lot, you can now do that entire thing digitally. These are just a few examples of how those digital scrapbooks in your time with Jerry can be immortalized forever. So Jerry once said about the music, when we're done with it, they can have it. So they actually let the Grateful Dead audience define them. They made them co-creators in the experience that fans walked away with. And that's exactly what we wanted to do with digital. We wanted the site to be something that people would come back day after day in the same way that they came back to the shows night after night, because every time they came back, it was something new.
All right, so finally, the last piece, of course, was reviving the spirit of the fans. Anybody getting seizures yet? All right, of course, Jerry Garcia really had an unparalleled connection with his fans, along with the other members of the Grateful Dead. And the fans really go out of their way to express themselves as fans, like this, which some guy did. That's actually Abraham Lincoln, believe it or not. And some guy actually drew Jerry's face on top of it. So it's always about fan expression. It's always about fans, showing themselves, showing their love for Jerry, whether it's through street art. This is little street art in front of the 710 Ashbury Street, where the Grateful Dead rose to prominence, or whether it's kind of graffiti-style art, or whether it's fine art, or whether it's body art, or naming their businesses, or naming their children. This kid's name was Jerry Garcia. I can't remember what the last name was, but we met him this year at Jerry Day. So naming their children. Really, like I said, everybody wore their time with Jerry kind of as a badge of honor. And one of the things we heard most often when we talked to fans throughout the build experience was, oh my God, I was so lucky to see him. So that's really what we were trying to capture. We were trying to capture that sense of, how many shows you saw and what was your time with Jerry, and even more importantly, really try and capture the essence of the tour on what it was like to meet friends on tour and reconnect with friends on tour throughout, as you went through the different cities.
So we keep talking about the lucky ones, and being not a lucky one myself, we didn't want to just let them live vicariously through everybody else. We actually wanted them to be able to go on tour, whether that's going to be for the first time or for the 51st time for somebody like Mark. So we created a digital tour experience that lets you move from point to point, venue to venue, show to show, in the same way that Jerry did and in the same order that he did. And you can move across 10 of his most epic tours of all time for both the Grateful Dead and the Jerry Garcia Band. And for each one, you can see how many miles he traveled, the stories of the tours. You can listen to the music that was played or see the set list. And the tour section is really intended to give you a taste of sort of that nomadic culture that everybody lived when they followed the Dead. We were also thinking about the commuters of the parking lot. So it's often said that the Grateful Dead is the original social band or even the original social network. And we knew that the commuters knew a lot about that, even when it just meant that they were meandering around a campground or a parking lot. And so one of our goals was to try to gather the tribe again and bring all those people together. And we knew that each show was going to be our gateway to doing that. That was the connective thread for them. And so we did something really simple, which is create the ability to say, I was there. I was at this show. But what we didn't realize is the power that this would have and what technology could actually bring to that. So we were not only able to see who was at each show, but we were actually able to reconnect people with all of their missing pieces from the time. When fans meet each other, they often try to determine if their paths ever crossed, if they ever went to the same shows, because this was before a time of email or Facebook or cell phones. And now they can do this within the parking lot. They can actually find the people that they met, reconnect with them, and really it's the gathering again of like-minded people sharing over a love of Jerry. For the people that spent years following the Dead, as Mark said, they wear their time really proudly, the years that they spent with Jerry. And, every show is just another piercing in the punch card of their devotion. And so we wanted to find a way to enable that fandom and really cultivate all those people that wore Jerry like a badge. So every time you say, I was there at any particular show, you can have your unique stats compiled for you. And you can start to see how many shows you attended, how that compares to the bigger community, or even Jerry himself. You can overlap the years that you spent with him on an interactive timeline, or see every song that you heard, how many times you heard it, which ones the community heard the most. You can see all the venues that he played, or where you visited the most, or again, where the fans did. So we took something that was completely static and unusable, and we made it entirely dynamic and something that can be reconfigured 1,000,000 times over and made specific for every single individual Jerry fan. And in a lot of ways, we took the most social band of all time and brought it to today and married it with the most social space in the world. In the same way that Jerry sort of reveled in the 60s hippie movement, we were able to gather that tribe and let them come together again. All right, so what happened after we launched? Well, we started to see an emotional resurrection in fans. So these are real posts that happened the day that we launched the site. And fans will go to great lengths, and we saw that immediately. We saw people trying to calculate the song that was playing on the exact moment that they were born. Or we saw groups of friends who had gone to see Jerry over and over again, realizing that they had heard a friend's favorite song one last time before that friend passed away, and actually taking comfort in knowing that. We saw people who were willing to, get out of their cubicle and wanting to get back on the bus again. When we talk about creating living nostalgia, that's what we're talking about. A desire to want to go back to 20 or 30 or 40 years ago and relive these moments again. We also launched on a Friday, and we saw dozens upon dozens of posts like this that really focused on time, that said, here's your Friday time killer, or cancel your weekend plans, or you'll be spending the next 2 weeks or 6 months in here. But what they were really saying is not just that they were going there and spending more than 5 minutes. They were actually seeing this as an escape. They were spending hours getting lost in this period of time and connecting with Jerry again. We were also featured in Rolling Stone, and even as one of the top stories in their newsletter, which is pretty compelling for a website, pretty exciting. And from there, more and more publications started to pick it up, radio stations started to talk about it, bloggers were spreading the word, great brands like Ben & Jerry's were tweeting about it, in case anybody raised their hand earlier for ice cream. And even great musicians like Ryan Adams were starting to take notice. But something that we didn't necessarily expect happened, which is we set out to create a website for a deceased musician, but ultimately we may have stumbled upon something that could inspire or even set the bar for what all musicians' websites could be. And there was nothing that Jerry loved more than something that was really diverting and interesting and lively and fascinating. And we took something that was altogether, lifeless or static, and we made it alive again. That was the digital resurrection that we were hoping for. And 18 years after his passing, we found that his fan base was as strong as ever, and that new fans were connecting with the spirit of Jerry every single day through digital. So we hope that you are able to connect with the spirit of Jerry as well today. So before we go, I just want to leave you on a note about passion. This was a project that started with a drunk email and ultimately ended up being a small team of people who saw the opportunity of a lifetime. And this is a picture of our war room, which we affectionately changed to be called a peace room in honor of Jerry. And you can see that we completely immersed ourselves in the experience, in the time, in Jerry's music, and everything that really contributed to that. And we're lucky enough to work for a company that let us follow that passion, but there's a great lesson in here about doing that, about taking a risk and seeing an opportunity and looking for things that you don't get to do every single day. And as Jerry said, put your money where your love is.
All right, so we're going to open it up to Q&A in a moment, but before we do, I want to allow Trixie to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Mark and Amy, and Critical Mass. As you've built something so beautiful. It's really important to honor the level of interest people have in all the details, the range of Jerry fans I've met over the years, and the things and little factoids or whatever that interest and fascinate them, needed to be present on the Dream website. I really wanted to honor the tapers or the instrument, the people who are into whatever technical things and equipment the Grateful Dead were using, as well as someone who is just discovering the Grateful Dead and make it accessible to them. So the way it's designed is so brilliant because it's not front loaded with a bunch of information. It's there. If you're looking for it, it's there. And I think the same as with the music. There's something there for everyone who's looking for it. And this whole thing has been an amazing journey for me too. I've learned a lot more about how far-reaching the influence is, how long this is gonna last. I'm making plans for beyond my own lifetime and trying to preserve his legacy and honor the fans. So it always makes me a little emotional to have to look at him for an hour, and that's probably why. And I apologize for how terrible that old website was. Oh my God, so sad. But a lot of people were so emotionally distraught after losing Jerry, and it became this whole, painful thing that no one wanted to deal with. And the family ourselves, we got tied up in a lot of legal situations, and the web presence was a victim of that. So when we finally made it a point to bring Jerry into the 21st century and honor the legacy as it should be done and get over our own emotional problems with it or whatever, it's been a great thing for everybody, and I just really happy about the resurgence of interest in the Grateful Dead. It seems like, people, I'm seeing young kids wearing the little Grateful Dead shirts, and I hear all the time about what a life-changing experience it was for people to discover the Grateful Dead, and that's kind of my mission is, to help more people discover that, even though it's not a lot of fun. So, yeah. Thank you so much, Critical Mass. Like, so beautiful. Glad to have made friends with you. Like, we really didn't have a lot to offer them when this started. We had to go, knocking on photographers' doors, and we pulled stuff out of so many far and distant places. It's really amazing. And my whole family is absolutely thrilled with the website. My mom, goes on and gets lost in there. So it's I hope it's also therapeutic for a lot of people who still, have those little missing Jerry, bumper stickers. It's not. There's so many cliches and cheesy things I could say, but it's really true. It's he's with you. That energy, that thing, that connection you had is always there, and try and share it with someone else and make the world a better place, right? So thank you. We're gonna do questions. Anything else pops up, I'll let you know. Thanks.
I don't really know how to follow Trixie or turn on a mic, but what I was just going to say is I'm Mark Allen, and I manage the Garcia family for Red Light Management. And just for the sake of full protection here, we were not involved in the first website that didn't exist. And one of the first things that Trixie and I did discuss was, well, we need to fix this right away. And wonderfully enough, Mark came in actually a little before us, but that conversation was going on as well. And I have to say, we didn't really believe him when I first saw the email, and I just kind of scratched my head and thought, well, that one's a lark. And then the Critical Mass team really not only delivered what they said they were going to deliver, but well beyond anyone's wildest imaginations. And as somebody that has spent a lot of time building a lot of artist websites with my clients, I don't think that any artist that, not only that I've worked with or that even our company has worked with, but I don't think that there's an artist website anywhere that compares to what these guys did with the depth and the knowledge that they've created, and basically the history that sits right at everyone's fingertips. And I just can't say enough great things about what Critical Mass did, and so I'll leave it at that.
Any questions?
Any questions? Or
Can I do Q&A?
Well, I just have a.
Oh, wait, he's going to mic you, so.
Oh, thank you. A little hot. I just have a quick comment. Really, I mean, Mark, your story sounds a lot like mine. I worked for a couple of years as a planner at a digital agency, and now I'm at a full-service shop. But depth and breadth and knowledge is one thing, but in the ad world, we've got a saying, I don't know where it comes from, that good ads will make people laugh, great work will make people cry.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Some great work.
Thank you.
That was nice. Anyone else?
anyone else?
All right.
We got one?
We got one more.
Go put on the music and dance.
It was great. Do you see rolling this out, the same type of infrastructure and work you've done for, I can think of other bands where this would work, maybe legacy sites or even bands that are around today? The one that's popping in my head is something like Pearl Jam, which they also have, thousands of shows, and something like this could work for them too. Is it something that can be done again, or is this a one-off process where all that passion was really about Jerry?
It's kind of a loaded question because yes, this could be done again. This is very quite templatized, and we could do it, especially for bands that do have a lot of content. The content, of course, is king, and Jerry happened to have a lot of content that we were able to gather. That said, this project, it was a lot of work that when I first wrote that email and I said, I'll consult, I'll tell you, it was like an onion that kept on pulling back layers and new information came out. And then with a band like this, if you're wrong, the fans get really mad and you have to make sure everything is super archived super accurately. So it was a tough road, and for myself, I'm probably going to take the next few weeks off and kind of recover from it. But yes, no, this could definitely be templatized, especially for anyone in the jam genre, or bands like Pearl Jam. I can see like Bruce Springsteen would be another great candidate for something like this. But really, it would involve someone that has a lot of content. That's what this would specialize in.
Hi, I have a question. Great job on the site. It's fantastic. Will you be able to download the music? I mean, as a longtime fan, it always seems kind of difficult to, BitTorrent. It's just this whole thing, technical thing, other than kind of using, I go to archive.org, but like, how do you actually get the music? And will that be on the site?
The site is built with the future in mind, and we've had a lot of conversations, particularly as it relates to Jerry Garcia's music outside of the Grateful Dead, which is a little less available, and which, unless you come to my office, and then I'm happy to play it all day long for you. But there are conversations that seem to make sense in that sphere that will make it easier for fans to get a hold of the music. I don't know if it would be in the sense of a download or more of a, more of a model of streaming as things go that way and things go mobile. But we were kind of taking a first things first approach and getting the site built. But what I can say is that the site is built with the idea of allowing more music to get to more fans sooner rather than later.
And I will comment now that aside from the archive music, we have fully embedded Spotify. So all the shows that were released, Dick's Pick shows, all of those that can be actually attached to a performance are available now on the site. So.
At some point, I'd love to make Jerry's entire archive available online. It's not that simple, but it's my mission somehow.
It's getting there.
We got one more question here.
I'm here. Hi.
Okay, good.
Hi, Mark. Nice to see you.
Hi, Phil.
How's it going? So, as somebody who has, Mark and I know each other, full disclosure, but as somebody who's been around, this music for, since 1970 when I was 9 years old. My brother brought home Working Man's Dead, and that was it. I was gone. Y'all still sell CDs. Y'all sell a lot of CDs.
We sell a lot of CDs.
Nobody buys CDs anymore. Apple stopped, having drives in their machines. The CD's dead. How do you guys do it? How do you guys sell the music when so much of it was given away for free? How do you guys monetize this without, because there's musicians here who want to make money.
I'd like to think quality is the first thing. I mean, this music has always been available, and the Tapers did a great job, and I've been grateful for the Tapers forever, and even, for a brief moment of my life was in that mix. But I think what it comes down to is the team that are on board, and we're definitely not like Mark and Amy up here and their team. We definitely don't do it. I'm not sitting there by myself. I've got teammates over at Red Light that live and breathe Jerry and the Grateful Dead as much as anyone else does, and so I think it comes from the perspective of a fan perspective. And when we sit down to listen for releases or decide what we want to do, we take in a few different keys to what that is, and we listen with our ears as fans, and we try to make those determinations as to what our friends would dig and what the people that we grew up listening to the music would like, and in hopes that there's enough other people in that world that do that, and so far so good. I mean, we've sold, if you're, and I'm the last person that's going to sit here and rally around SoundScan and SoundScan numbers in 2013, but for the sake of percentages, or 2014, sorry, living in the past today. We do about 83% physical in our sales, and we released 4 different archival releases last year, and I think it just goes towards the demand of Jerry's music. Garcia band music, and Jerry and Merle and all the things outside of the Dead weren't as readily available once the tape trading community went digital. You know, at no point in time while the archive is around, at no point in time where the Jerry Garcia band shows up on the archive, and you know, I don't know if it would have made a difference anyway, because all of those people that have the music are still trading it internally. But I think with the help of Joe Gasswort, who's an incredible mastering engineer, and who worked closely with Jerry when he was alive, so he brings, with each recording, he always brings, you know, a little bit of Jerry into those sessions, and understands how these things need to sound to hopefully have made Jerry content with the process and with the releases that we've done. And there's a lot of hurdles, because, you know, we get into the vaults and we find tape cuts, and, you know, we make jokes all the time about the fact that, you know, you always knew when somebody was a little too high based on the cut. Because the cut would be random, and then all of a sudden 5 minutes later they'd realize that the tape wasn't rolling, and then they'd change the reel, and you'd just kind of, you know, internally kid about, well, Betty must have had some really good drugs on that day or whatever, and I take that back because I don't know at all, but it was just a fun internal joke. The point being, you know, Joe really does an incredible job mastering these things, and I think the fans want to hear more. I think when you hear the quality of the work that our engineers are doing, it makes people want to have the physical product. In addition, you know, we try to add things into our releases, liner notes, little stories that you can't get elsewhere, photos you can't get elsewhere. Even with our box sets, trying to come up with ways and creative ways to make it interesting for the fans to listen to the music. And it helps to have Jerry. I mean, we kind of have that ace in the hole. You know, his music is what sells it, quite frankly. So we're all grateful for that.
Over here, I guess, is this on? Just, you know, kudos on the website. Congratulations to the effort. As a fan and not one in the industry, I really appreciate what you've done. And I guess this is a bit of a follow-on to the last question. Having discovered Grateful Dead channel on Sirius, how does that play into the efforts of getting more music out to more listeners?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Trixie, as a frequent visitor to the Sirius Grateful Dead channel, you know, Grateful Dead channel has been incredibly supportive since we've launched the site, since we've relaunched the Jerry Garcia Family LLC has stepped up and started putting out new music. They've been incredibly supportive with hour-long specials, and you know, and the hosts from Gary and David over at Sirius and Tales from the Golden Road have been incredibly supportive of all of our efforts, be it the symphony shows that we've put on, and they've been a great promotional tool in order to keep the Grateful Dead community alive. But I think part of it is just the community itself. You know, it thrives. You know, I noticed that there's a panel tomorrow on EDM and the Grateful Dead culture. The community is so strong that it's just about making sure that fans have different ways to get the information. And Sirius is one aspect to that. This site is another aspect to that. You know, the Facebook page is another aspect. You know, Trixie's work with the Rex Benefit and Trixie's work in general, just her and her sisters getting out there and talking about this stuff. We have a great fan in Pete Shapiro, who has, you know, been incredibly supportive with each of his venues, trying to tie in, you know, different aspects of Jerry's life, and even going so far as to open a Garcia's bar. You know, there's just a number of fans that rally around that, and you know, Sirius being one of those ways, and we work closely with them, as do obviously Rhino and the Grateful Dead to keep the information out there.
I think we have time for one more, yeah. Okay.
I just want to say that the whole website in itself is so inspiring, and to thank you so much for sharing the story. Trixie, I was wondering from your perspective, what was maybe the most, I guess, inspirational or interesting or unknown thing that you had learned through the discovery of all the information coming together and everything?
So much. Yeah, the overwhelming amount of facts and knowledge to know. I will never be an expert in the Grateful Dead or in my father's career. Like, it's just overwhelming, and I try to try to be selective in what sticks in my brain. yeah, just some of the, the little stories that people tell about little moments they had with Jerry, and just like, affirmations that, yeah, he was a cool ass dude. Like, yeah, that's great. That's so Jerry, just gentle, smart, and insightful, Sorry, I don't have anything specific. It's just too much. Too much. But I wanted to say that my first job out of high school was for David Gans, the host of the Sirius radio show. He was doing Grateful Dead Hour locally, and is still a good friend of mine. So whatever they want to do over there, I'm in total support and will help. I try to just facilitate what should be done for Jerry is kind of my role. And luckily, there's so many people dedicated and passionate about the music that it's not too hard to find people willing to help make these things happen.
And on that note,
I think.
thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you.